I could win the Nobel Prize. And as far as the people, older people in Nashville, they wouldn't know anything, but they'd remember about West High School.
Well, I always look forward to going out there, you know, because they had basketball teams back in, I think, 1944. I believe they won a state championship, like maybe 44, 46, and maybe 48, something like that. I'm not sure. And I used to know a lot of the Vanderbilt guys as I was growing up because one of the students stayed at our house, and her boyfriend was Gene Southwood, and he would come up there, and Dave Cardokas and Bob Dudley Smith. My sister knew Bob Dudley and Charlie Daugherty and Floyd Chandler, and that's who she married, Floyd. And she was a cheerleader, and you know, I just grew up watching them and hearing them talk all the time, and of course going to West, and it's sort of like, you know, living your dream, wanting to get in high school and try to do the same things that you'd seen them do before.
I went to Howard for 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, and I really wanted to move because I wanted to take some classes that I wanted. I wanted to take Latin, and I wanted to take chemistry and physics, and there was question whether Howard had enough students that were interested in that for them to have those courses. So I had to get permission to be out of the district. So I would get up in the morning like at 6 o'clock, and I'd catch the bus, transfer at 6th and Broad, get to West around 6:45 or 7 o'clock. I'd go to the library, I'd study for an hour till class. I did that for the whole sophomore year. And then in, I'd say September of my junior year, my parents bought a house on Richardson Avenue, which was a block away, right between Old Ransom and West, and bought a house right there. And so I could get up at 7:45 and be at school, have breakfast and be at school at 10 after 8. So that worked out much better.
And it was a little bit, I think, a little bit more of a community type thing when we moved over to Princeton. My parents had some friends that lived right across the street. They had told us about the house, and then there were several boys my age or right around it that were living in and around that area. So it was a little bit more of a community type place. We kind of remember it. My brother and I kind of remember it as one of the better neighborhoods we lived in, or best neighborhoods we lived in during our growing up years.
Well, I moved into the Hillsborough Village area when I was entering the 7th grade and went to Cabot Junior High. And I had two older sisters who had gone there, and in fact one was, when I was in my 10th grade, she was a 12th grader, so you know, I knew of the experiences they had had there, and so I was looking forward to it in a very fond way, I guess.
Back then, the grade breakdown was 1 through 6 in elementary school at Aiken, and then 7 through 9 in junior high. And so I'd gone to Calvert 7 through the 9th grade, and then entered West as a sophomore. And so my first year there, I was just sort of in awe that I was at a place that I'd always admired and always had heard about. So as I say, I had a very warm feeling for West before I ever got there. And then when I got there, as I say, I was just tickled to death, and it turned out to just to be as I say, a great place to be.
I met Jimmy French for the first time the first summer we moved there in between the school seasons, and he and Jimmy Lewis, who turned out to be a great baseball player, went on to Vanderbilt and played with Jimmy French and Ralph Greenbaum there. Jimmy French and Jimmy Lewis were over there on the baseball field, and my younger brother and I and two of our friends that were visiting from Hermitage showed up to play, and so the two of them said, well, we'll just play the four of you. And we didn't think that was going to be a fair deal. And it wasn't. we were introduced to two really good ball players, and were really humbled by how they turned us upside down. And so that was my first exposure to Jimmy French and Jimmy Lewis.
I guess I was 4th or 5th grade. I played. We used to play a game at in the neighborhood, and we would play horse. You know, you'd play horse. If I made a shot, then you had to make the shot. But the whole group of us, but instead of being a horse, you had to take off a piece of clothes, shirt, stuff like that. And you'd play until he didn't have any clothes on. He'd have socks off, he'd be buck naked. I'm really serious. And I didn't want to lose that game. And all the other guys had to stay naked until the last person was out. So you learn how to shoot real good. And then I played, this is the first time I met Jimmy. We were playing, he played for, I guess we were in about the 7th grade, or maybe the 6th grade. We were, and it was at the old, what's called YMHA, which was right across from became the Jewish Community Center, but it was up on Union, right across from the old library. And it was right by WSM. It had a, I don't know, it was concrete floor or whatever it was. And we played basketball. I used to, I guess I was 10 years old. Yeah, I was playing basketball a lot at 10 years old. And I was the ball boy for the YMHA Peps, which was a men's basketball team. And then Joe Kraft, who was Joe was a good athlete, and Maxie Bean, a whole bunch of them, and his brother. They played in a city league. But they had this team, all these guys coming out of the Army. And I was the ball boy. I would be there, and I would shoot at halftime. And there was a character named Sam Brown that would throw long shots. He was retarded, little guy, and he'd go to all the games, and he'd go out and shoot at halftime, and I'd go out and play with him. I'd get the ball, throw it to him, and stuff like that. So I played that, and I played basketball against Jimmy. It was as a scout troop. And then we played up at the old I had to be in the 5th or 6th grade. And then when I was at Howard, I played in the 7th grade, and the 8th grade, and the 9th grade, and just kept on going.
But I started in West in the 7th grade, and West, one of the reasons they had this basketball tradition, they had Waverly Belmont, all the kids that went through the 9th grade at Waverly Belmont, they came over to West High. From Calvert, they came to West, and there was a really good junior high basketball program league, and so they all fed into West, and West Junior.
A group, when we were in the 9th grade at Calvert, some of the guys decided they were going to be brave and go out for spring football practice in the 9th grade. So they go over for about 2 weeks and get indoctrinated to Coach Chaparro's techniques. And that almost convinced them that they didn't want to play football, because here they are, these 13, 14-year-old boys, trying to take on and keep up with the drills that Coach Chaparro had, because they were not easy drills, and he was a pretty tough taskmaster. And they almost convinced us in the 10th grade not to go out for football, but most everybody did.
I was born in a place called Theta Hill. If you go down to Spring Hill and turn right and go 10 miles, that'd be Theta Hill. I mean, I think now it's called Theta. And it was located up on a big hill, which was designated the Theta Hill. But anyway, and then you go southeast and you come to Columbia. So it was sitting on a triangle. So 1911 was when I was born there. I got me a job of assistant coach down there at Peabody under Bill Swartz. So that's the way I worked in and got my master's degree. Well, that was 36, I believe it was. Got this little job down in a place called Winterboro, Alabama, a little country school, and with my master's degree, $125 a month for 9 months. And then stayed there for 3 years, and the job came open at Talladega High School, and I was offered the job, and so I moved on up there. 6 years.
Wow.
And they won 2 state championships in football during that time.
And you were the head basketball or football or everything, or?
Let's see, football, basketball, baseball, and when I had off time, track.
Good heavens! Well, were you a celebrity in that part of the state?
Well, Talladega High School was at that time because of their football prowess, if that's a good word. At that time Bear Bryant, he walked in, he was at, I believe at Maryland at that time. He'd come out of the Navy and had brought a lot of his boys. They had a Navy team, and he'd brought a lot of his boys up to Maryland, and they had good two or three good years. But then he moved to Kentucky, and he walked into the gym, and he said, "Howard," I said, "Joe," I said, "how'd you like to be my representative down here in this neck of the woods?" And I said, "Well, I don't know, Coach." So I said, "This is Auburn, Alabama, part of the state. Everything in Alabama, of course, is." And he said, "Well," he said, "I'll give you $500 a year if you'll represent me. I'll take anybody you advise, from any teams." And I said, "Well, I don't know. I have to check." So I checked with the sports writer at the local newspaper there, and he said, "Well, I don't see anything wrong with it." So I wrote Coach Bryant and said, "Okay, I'll take it." So the next mail, 5 $100 bills. So that went on for 2 or 3 years, and I sent him a few boys, not many, but he took all of them, and they all did real well up there. Anyway, when he was down there, Ruth and I were living in this upstairs apartment, about 2 rooms and a bath, I think it was, and and so I asked him would he come on up and meet Ruth, and so he did, and I introduced him, and I can understand where Bear Bryant was such a good recruiter. I mean, he walked in, flopped down at the table, and Ruth said, "Coach, would you like a cup of coffee?" "Ma'am, I surely would. I was just hoping somebody would offer me a cup of coffee." I mean, he was just down to earth person, and made people feel close. And so before he left, I thought Ruth was going to get up and go with him. I mean, he was just that type of guy. And then the Peabody job, Bubba Murphy was a coach at Peabody. He and Bubba and I were teammates at Central High School. And so the job came open, and it was, my parents were getting on in age and everything, and it was home, so to speak. So I applied for the job and got it and stayed there 2 years at Peabody. And then Jack Knox who was the drawer, or I guess you'd call it.
Cartoonist, yeah.
Cartoonist, yeah, for the paper. And he and Dr. Yarbo were real good friends. And I'd known Dr. Yarbo in some respect. I forget what respect it was. And I applied for the job and got it over there at West, and stayed there I went there in 49 and closed it out when they phased it out in 68.
We had this fantastic leader, a man named Dr. Yarbrough, who was principal of the school. He was very respected by all the students, even the troublemakers. He just had a way about him, and I can remember at some of the assembly meetings, he would lead the student body in singing "America the Beautiful," and then there was another song that he really liked, "Don't Fence Me In." And he would lead everybody in singing that, and he really he believed in the freedom, but I remember one time, I think I heard him say, your freedom ends where my nose begins.
I was able to worm my way on to the office staff as a junior, and I handled delivering a lot of the notes, handled a lot of the discipline, went and got the students that were having problems with school. So one day, his wife, she taught at Ransom School, which was just a couple of blocks from West High School. So he called me in one day and said, "Look, I need to send this note over to my wife. Would you mind taking that thing over?" And he stapled it together and handed it to me. So I got about halfway walking over there, and I opened the note up, and it says, "Honey, I am sorry I fussed at you last night. I could have died that I was imposing on his personal life." And he was sending a note of apology over to his lovely wife. That was just nobody knew that either end. No one knew this, but it was a most embarrassing and stupid mistake on my part to be involved in that. But I mean, he would absolutely do anything good to get kids scholarship money, anything he could help. If kids need rides, if they need lunch money, whatever it was, he provided for them. And between he and Coach Chaparro, as I mentioned before, they ran a tight, loosely knit ship.
It was a great school. It was a great school because of its spirit.
It was unlike any other. I mean, we had, I'm looking over at four-leaf clover, and the student body was very cohesive, and it was known more as a basketball school, I think, than it was, as a football school or baseball. And so the basketball got a lot of interest, and we always had pep rallies each week before the games, and the cheerleaders were certainly doing their part. And,
well, it meant tremendous rapport with the student body and with your friends, and everybody, I can honestly say, were friends, because back then you had the neighborhood schools, you grew up in the neighborhood, and most of the people that went to West you knew beforehand. So it was just sort of like, a big family. And the spirit at West High School was second to none. It was a great experience to know that you had the support of the student body behind you. Teachers and the students. That was huge. And so, as I say, it was a very friendly, warm atmosphere at West, and really a loving type of relationship. You knew people really cared about you, and you cared about them, and it wasn't imitation. It was real, and so those relationships mean a lot. They still mean a lot today. Some of the best friends I've got were classmates of mine at West High School.
When you're sitting over wiping yourself off with a towel a little bit, you might gaze around and look, and then you get a little fired up, almost nostalgic, I guess. I mean, it was that kind of excitement, that feeling of that student body. Because they act like they love you, And the student body, they were great. Always cheered you on, and I don't know, it's something about it. You just sort of have to live it, I guess, to feel what it was really like. It's very emotional.
School spirit was unbelievable. I mean, everybody was pulling from the same wagon. It was absolutely team first, me second. And I mean, that was from the head cheerleader to the lowest 10th grader that was borrowing money to, we'd loan them money so they could come to the basketball games and so forth. So it was the spirit. We'd have 100% attendance at the basketball games on a Tuesday night. Everybody'd be there. Of course, we didn't have a whole lot to do either. I mean,
they had the spirit. They had the spirit. And when they had those, go to Ortron, have a pep rally. That's what I'm trying to think of. Have a pep rally, and it was loud. And they just really carry on, and in that auditorium, Doc let them do anything they want to do. Get them all excited about the game.
Now, what is it you want to sing? Hallelujah. If you're able, kid, let's stand and sing the national anthem.
Ready. There's the time.
I cannot recall a single teacher at West that I would consider weak in their subject. Every one of them were super, and I won't say all of them inspired you to do better, but they did make you want to study, and they even had a diversified occupations program back then, so even some of the students that were a little less fortunate financially, they had to work earlier on, they got to get their degree, and I thought that was good. A lot of, I won't say old mate spinsters, and I remember several of them just really took an interest in you. I mean, if you didn't get your homework and started falling out a little bit, you got a note to your parents, or I'm talking even in high school, they'd call you and want to talk to you about it. Why are you not performing? Miss Hines was the physics and chemistry teacher. Miss Matthews, biology. Miss Gaither, Cully Gaither, she was my math teacher, really, and also Mrs. Harris. Miss Johnson taught geography. Ms. Ellis, wife of our dentist we went to for a while, taught English. And Miss Dembski, I can't leave her out. She was the mad Russian English, tight with her discipline in the classes, and her favorite saying, and that I ought not to say this, but she would say, "What are you doing?" And that's the way she'd say it in that accent, and mainly to someone like me who was goofing off or something. And you mentioned Mr. Christopher. He was the, what was it? I can't remember his first name, but he was the custodian.
One time, I told you about this Mrs. Dembski. She's a Latin teacher and an English teacher, a little Jewish lady. Nice. Some guys got some Lindbergh cheese and put on the radiator in her room. And when the steam got up that morning, it really got, oh, you couldn't stay in that room hard. She called me, she called Doc. And Doc called me and he said, "Go down and see Miss Dembski. She's got something wrong in her room." And I went down there and I opened the door and I said, "Can't go in there." And them kids was in there raising Cain. I said, "Miss Dembski, I think you better take those children to the auditorium or someplace. They're not going to be able to stay in here." So she took them to the auditorium and had class down there. Well, my crew and myself, we got soap and water and scrubbed that radiator all day long, rinsed it, scrubbed it, opened the windows wide open, get some circulation in there. And the next morning it smelled almost as bad. So she had a class down there. She finally got about 2 days down in the auditorium. Got where it smelled, but it didn't smell like it did, because we worked on it every day. That was the project, get the smell out.
I can remember in my 7th grade shop class, we had this real stern guy who taught shop, and then later on mechanical drawing. His name was Paul Mortimer, and his brother taught there too, the brothers. But Mr. Mortimer, and he was kind of like Dr. Yarber in a way. He got the discipline, but Mr. Mortimer had a Coke machine back there in the back. And, you know, this is 1953 or something. I mean, you know, you could go back in and put a nickel in and buy you a Coca-Cola. But if you spill that Coke anywhere, you know, lo and behold, and he had up on the board, if you did something, he forbade you from chewing gum in that class. And if you talked when you weren't supposed to be talking, he didn't say anything. He just went up there and put your name on the board. And if you got your name on the board with 2 marks by it, he went over to his closet, he opened up his door, and they had these belts there. And everybody got a belt. And these were big wide leather belts. And you went outside west over to the side, and you had to run the belt line. And everybody got a good whack in on you because they knew that they might have to run that belt line, and you know, you were going to get whacked. Now that was Mr. Mortimer did that in his school. He didn't have any problem with discipline in his class, and he'd say, well, we're going to have a West Wind subscription drive here, and I think everybody in the class ought to at least sell 2 subscriptions. What do you think? And everybody said, yeah, yes, sir, Mr. Mortimer. And so if you don't sell 2 subscriptions, you know, we want to win this prize. You know, they'd have a $10 prize or something for the school, for the class that sold the most, or got the most PTA, or got the most whatever. Mr. Mortimer's class always won. And he'd keep all the money and keep an accounting of it. And at the end of the year, we'd have, I don't know, $30, $40 in this thing. And he'd say, well, we'll have a little class party. And they would. They'd have a little party. And then he'd say, now what we're going to have left over, we're going to have, I think it'd be a good idea if we bought us a book to have in our library. And we said, oh yeah, that's a good idea. You know, so he'd have his little library built up of shop books. But it's funny, back then somebody across the street, I think, complained about the belt line. So they had to do away with that. So then when I was in the 10th grade, and I was architectural drawing, mechanical drawing, and he taught that, they didn't have the belt line. Instead, you bent over the desk, and he would go around the room, and you'd be the first guy in the first row would be the one to administer the 3 licks, and it'd be the next guy and the next guy, and whoever the offender was had to, you know, bend over the desk, and it would be your turn to administer. And if you tried to go easy, he wasn't going for that. You know, you might try, So you had to really put it into it, because you knew when it came your time, somebody's going to whack you pretty good.
I had a note that I could leave the campus at any time. You know, I carried it in my little wallet that he gave me permission. You're not supposed to leave the campus, you know. I only lived a block away. My mother had heart disease. I mean, had real bad heart. And if she wasn't feeling good, I could just walk over to the house and see how she felt. Because my sister was away at college, and my dad was at the store. And so I might go over there. But I also worked, I played, sports in the afternoon, and I worked on Saturday. I never could get a haircut. So I would had a note to leave school, and I'd go and get a car, and I'd drive out to Belmead barbershop. And, it was at that time it was right on where the Hills was, when it was right on the corner, on facing close to Belmead Boulevard, next to the Esso station. And there was the grocery, and then there was a beauty parlor and a hardware store, and Belmead Barbershop. Belmead Barbershop had Mr. Cooper and Johnny and Bob and Mr. Clark, Buford Clark's, the Clark twins' daddy was there, and I'd go there to get a haircut, and that's when everybody was getting flat tops. And my hair was too soft; I couldn't get a flat top. But that was the only way I could get a haircut because I worked. So he gave me permission to leave the campus. And when I would leave, this old Mr. Mortimer used to get really teed off because he'd see me walking over toward the house and he wanted to report me. And he knew I had this note. It used to really chap him, I believe.
Down in the basement of West High School, there was an armory. Very few people knew about this armory. The walls were about 4.5 or 5 foot thick. We had a rifle range down there where you practice shooting a rifle. We had another room that had about 200 M1 rifles in there. And we drilled every other day with the rifles, and we had we had regular uniforms. We had to wear them 2 days a week, the military uniforms. And so that was the fifth subject you took at all the 3 major public high schools in Nashville, Tennessee. And of course, that was dropped after our sophomore year because the federal government quit funding it. So as a consequence, that was vacant space at West High School. So Coach Chaparro took it upon himself to convert that bomb shelter, so to speak, to the locker rooms.
Another thing I remember about those days back in junior high at West, this was a time when Fidel Castro was just coming about in Cuba, and he was kind of a hero back then. And everybody in junior high, all the guys would get these fatigue pants with these pockets on the side, kind of like Castro's troops wore, and a lot of people wore these little hats. This was while he was fighting in the mountains and coming to power, and it show you how times change. But that was kind of the mood at the time. And another thing I remember about that time when I was at West, Andy Griffin had just come out and made a record. It was called What It Was Football. He came to West and was like everybody at Assembly came and listened. And this was back when he was just getting started. Those Assembly shows were something, West, everybody attended, and they usually have something of interest. And also, something unusual for the time, Dr. Yarbrough, we'd have these television sets that they would set up. This is the early days of TV, but we'd set up in the auditorium on the stage, and during the World Series, and I'm pretty was they had the televisions in there so that on your lunch hour or whatever, and maybe when it wasn't your lunch hour, you go in and watch the World Series.
We had a lot of fun doing a lot of simple things. Now we had the sweet shop, and we had the pool hall, and that was just about as wild as it got, in some way. But we went on hay rides. We'd chip in a couple of bucks a piece, and from what odd and end job we'd have, we'd run a truck, and we'd get somebody, an adult, to drive a truck, and we'd get hay, and hot dogs and cold drinks and potato chips, and we'd go to Percy Warner Park or Edward Warner Park or whatever the case might be. And heck, we sing in the back of the truck going out there, and which going back to the basketball, jumping around, but the four-leaf clover deal, you know, I'm looking over four-leaf clover. I heard that a few times. And anyway, every time I'd hear it, you know, it would just, it would fire you up, hearing those kids singing that. But I'm jumping around a little on you here, but that brought it back to me. But we'd sing in the back of the truck, you know, and some of us, Lord of mercy, 99 bottles of beer on the, I don't know if you ever heard that or not. Go all the way down and back and forth, we sing it. And we just, you know, we had a lot of fun. Then the sweet shop, like, I guess it was a hub for all the schools to where you'd meet people and everything. But there's a lot of simple things that we did, you know. I was going swimming in the summertime and using the parks and the facilities of the parks, and which we were just fortunate. It seemed like we was always busy doing things that really didn't cost a lot, you know. And very few of us had a car, and you know, one might have a car one night, and Dad might let him have it. You know, all four we might double date sometimes. Oh Lord, we run a little short on funds. This probably is not what you'd want to hear, but we need a little gas, and I'm letting the cat out of the bag here. But behind the gym at West, you know, we had a parking lot where we parked. And there's a path that went through the woods up to Richland Country Club. And we figured folks at Richland Country Club could afford a few gallons. You know what we do? We slip up there, and somebody called it a Georgia credit card or something. But no, that's what they call it now. But we siphon gas out, you know, put it, and we take our dates up there with us. It would be maybe two couples, you know. They go up there and we siphon that gas out and go put it in the car, and then we could ride, you know, because we didn't have no money to buy no more gas. And things like that. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Nobody was hurt. Somebody might have been, we'd always pick them Cadillacs if we could, because we figured they had more gas in it and they could afford it. Oh, man.
All right, let's sing the alma mater.
On the city's western border, grid against the sky, proudly stands our alma mater as the years go by.
They all were really proud of us, the 54 team. The 54 team has a really a special place. they may have some better teams, and you know, Coach Strickland had all the good teams from 44 to 48. They won all those games, but they're not as well known as we were because of just because of the way things happened.
And it was just a great time to be in school. The teachers were you know, everybody says their school was the best, but this school was really something special. The memories, I'm sure, for me and anybody who went to school during that time will be something that will stay with them forever. It was just a fantastic experience.